got there, I went inside the ambulance and tried to ask her, who did this to you?
Okay. And how did you know to ask her that question?
Well, the situation she was in, it was terrible. We were just trying to find out, who would do this to her.
When you got to the scene where her car was burned, did you talk to people at the scene?
No, I didn't talk to no one at the scene.
Okay. So did you know that at that time that she had been set on fire?
Mm-hmm. I did.
And how did you know that?
But the medics, the paramedics.
So you talked to them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And when you went into the ambulance at the landing zone, what did you ask her?
I asked her, who did this to you?
Okay. And what did she say?
She stated Eric. That's what she.
Okay. And did you ask her any other questions?
No. Like I said, she could barely even speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
But did you ask her if it was a white male or a black male?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what was her response?
No, she just said Eric. Like I said, she couldn't have how to talk.
All right. Hand you a document. And just ask you to look at that and look down at the very bottom. Is that your report?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Did you ask her if it was a white male or a black male that had done this to her? Did you ask her that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was her response, as best you could understand it?
The best I understand is a black male.
Okay. Now, were you talking to her like you and I are talking right now?
Yes, sir.
Was she that clear to you, or I think you just said that she was having trouble?
She could barely speak,
Okay. Tender the witness, Your Honor.
All right. Cross.
Good morning, Ms. House.
Good morning.
How are you today?
All right.
Mr. House, you actually went to the scene
Yes, sir.
on December the 6th. That's
Mm-hmm.
correct, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what time you actually arrived at the scene?
No.
Okay. Now, you testified just a minute ago that you believe you were at the scene for 15 or 20 minutes?
Yeah, yes, sir. At the scene right there. So
And-
we went to the landing zone.
Okay. And when I say the scene, I'm talking about where this incident happened out on Heron Road.
Yes, sir.
You believe you were there for about 15 to 20
Maybe
minutes?
15 to 20 minutes.
And I know it's an estimate,
Yeah.
but that comports with what you recall as you sit here today? Okay. Now, did you speak to Ms. Chambers when you were there at the scene on Heron Road?
No, I didn't speak to her then.
Okay. Who did you speak to?
Well, it was
during this time?
some of the paramedics that was there.
Do you recall any specific people that you actually spoke to?
No. Because
Okay.
like I said, seems chaos.
Now, where were you when you actually got the call?
I was around the Batesville area when I got the call.
In Batesville?
Yes, sir, around
How long
Batesville.
did it actually take you to get from Batesville to the scene of this incident?
Oh, let's see. We running code. It maybe took 10, 15 minutes, maybe less than that.
Okay. So from the time you actually got the call, it took you about 10 or 15 minutes to get there. Okay. And then you were there for about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
And I believe you indicated that you followed Ms. Chambers to the landing zone.
Yes, sir.
So can I take it that you actually followed the ambulance
Yes,
to the
sir.
landing zone? Okay. Now, when you actually made it to the landing zone, you actually spoke to Ms. Chambers. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were where at the time you had this conversation with her?
Inside the ambulance.
Okay. So this would have been prior to the actual helicopter making it there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was the landing zone?
It was at the church.
Okay. And that would have been how far from the place of this incident?
Ooh, maybe it wasn't that far. I'm saying.
Okay. How long did it take you to get there? A couple of minutes?
About a couple minutes, yeah.
Cortland
Couple of
is-
5 minutes, yeah.
Cortland is a fairly small place.
Yes, sir.
And this was in a fairly close proximity.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You got to the landing zone, and you actually got into the back of the ambulance and spoke with Ms. Chambers, did you
Yes,
not?
sir. I
Okay.
did.
When you spoke to her, could you actually hear her clearly?
You couldn't hear very clearly, no.
Okay. Let me ask you like this. When you spoke to her in the back of the ambulance, was the noise in the back of the ambulance, did it keep you from understanding what she was saying to you?
No,
Okay, you could understand
Yeah.
what she was saying. It was difficult, but you understood it, didn't you?
I did.
And you actually asked her who did this to you.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you said who did this to you, you were referring to setting her on fire,
Yes, sir.
okay? And she responded, Eric.
She did.
How did it sound?
She just said, I asked Miss Chambers, I said, who did it? And she said, Eric.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she, in your report, you indicated that she could barely speak, but you
Yeah.
made that out. Okay. Now, did you have to hold your ear down to her face, or could you? Where were you? Were you
Let's see,
kneeling
I
over
was, let's see, when she was landing, I was standing just almost right over top of her.
her? Okay. Were you standing, or were you on the knees?
Yeah, no, I was standing, but I was bent down.
You bent down.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who else was in the ambulance at the time?
Deputy Tucker was in there also.
Deputy Tucker.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you had a conversation with Miss Chambers, did you not?
Yes, sir.
And you asked her, as part of your investigation to try to figure out what was going on with this, who did this to you?
Yes, sir.
And she said Eric.
Yes, sir.
And you indicated if it was her boyfriend. You asked her if it was her boyfriend or not. Did you ask her that?
No, I didn't ask her that. I can't recall.
Mr. Champion handed your report when he was questioning you. Do you still have that report?
No, sir, I don't have it.
Okay, may I approach you on?
You may.
Do you see the narrative at the bottom there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that the report that you actually made out for this incident?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And take a look at that. Just let me know when you finish.
Okay.
You finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, after you reviewed that report, do you recall asking her whether or not it was a boyfriend?
No.
Okay. So, do you see that part of the report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it indicates that you asked her if it was a boyfriend.
Okay, yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
And what I'm trying to get to is, did you actually ask her that? Now that you look at the report, do you
Yes, sir.
recall asking her that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And she stated to you that it wasn't her boyfriend. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mhm.
Okay. And then you actually took a photo of Miss Chambers?
Yes, sir.
Why did you take the photo of her, Mr. House?
On all scenes, like I say, when something like this happens, we have to take photos.
Was that just part of you
Yes, sir.
investigating
Part
this?
of our investigation, yes, sir.
Were you actually on scene when the helicopter came?
Yes, sir.
Did you actually speak with any of the people in the helicopter?
No, sir, I did not.
Ask court's indulgence.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, my personal witness to retrieve this report. Thank you, Ms. House.
Yes, sir.
Are you ready?
No, sir, Your Honor.
What instructions would you give the officer?
Making final release.
All right, sir, you may leave the courtroom or stay in the courtroom, or you can go patrol. May I call you next witness?
Chuck Tucker.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in law in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your name?
Chuck Tucker.
And are you a Pinota County deputy?
I am.
How long have you been a deputy?
13 years.
And were you a deputy back on December the 6th of 2014?
Yes.
And what shift were you working on December the 6th of 2014?
I was working the 6P to 6A.
Okay. And do you recall getting dispatched to Heron Road in Cortland?
I do.
And do you remember the nature of the call that came out?
It was a car fire and a female that had been burned.
And did you know where Heron Road was at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember where you were when you got the call?
I was at Coles Point.
And now they don't understand where Coles Point is. That's out at Sardis Lake, is that
Yes,
right?
out by the Lafayette County line.
Okay. And did you in fact respond?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Just so the jury will understand the geography, because they're from Tibaha County, understand the geography. Sardis Lake, where does Sardis Lake sit in relation to Batesville?
It's 13 miles east, and then you go about another 5 miles north to the Sardis Lake.
And then in relation to Batesville, where is Cortland?
It's about 5 miles south of Batesville.
So approximately 18 miles from the lake to Cortland.
At
is that
least,
correct?
yes.
Okay. And when you arrived at the scene on Heron Road, where did you go?
I went to the scene first, and when I pulled up at the scene, I was talking on the phone to Major Barry Thompson, and the ambulance was leaving with Jessica, and Darrell House was following the ambulance. Well, Barry told me to go to the landing scene and help him set up the landing scene and see if I could get any information. So I turned around and followed them down to the landing scene.
So did you ever get out at the scene where the car was?
I don't think I did, no.
Okay. And where was the landing zone in relation to the scene where Jessica was burned?
It was approximately a mile back down on Main Street, which Heron Road turns into Main Street, right there in the church parking lot by the railroad tracks.
Did you know Jessica?
Yes,
I believe her father worked with y'all at that time. Is that
Yes.
correct? And I believe what was Ben's responsibility with?
he was a mechanic at the sheriff's department.
Okay. Did you recognize, or did you go into the ambulance?
I did,
And did you recognize her?
yes.
What was her condition?
She was basically burnt from head to toe, hair singed, skin hanging everywhere. I mean, it was pretty bad.
You ever seen anything like that?
Not while they're still alive, no.
Did you and Darrell talk to Jessica?
Yes, we did.
And what did you ask her?
I asked her who did this, and she responded what sounded like Eric.
Now, was she speaking like you and I are talking right
No,
now?
not at all.
Well, describe for the jury how she was talking.
It was real, real low and mumbled. And I asked her, I said, Eric who? And she said, no. And I said, you don't know? No. But, I mean, I don't know if she was saying no, not Eric, or no, she didn't know Eric's last name. But she was saying no.
And did you ask her the color of the person who had done this?
Later, right as I was talking to her, my phone rang and it was the sheriff. So I got out of the ambulance to speak with the sheriff, and he was en route there. And the sheriff asked me if he was black or white, and I told her, I said, I'll find out. So I got back in the ambulance, and I asked her, I said, Jessica, was he black or white? And she said black.
Once
And,
again, did she say black like you and I?
Not real plain, no, no. I mean, you had to, listen, she was real, real low and mumbled, and I mean, she was having difficulty breathing. You could see the skin in her nose going in and out as she was breathing rapidly, trying to breathe. And so, no, she was not plain at all. She never tried to make a full sentence or statement at all. It was just yes or no or something like that.
And when you asked her who did this, and she said, or what you thought you heard to be Eric,
That's what it sounded like, yes.
and then she immediately after that said no.
She said no. When I asked her, Eric who, what was his last name? She said no. And I'm like, you don't know his last name? No. So,
After you spoke with her, and I assume you weren't in there very long, is that right?
no, not at all.
Okay, what did you do after you left the ambulance?
Well, after I went back in and asked her if it was black or white, the helicopter was landing and crew was getting ready to package her, so I stepped back out of the ambulance. And at that time, the sheriff had arrived on scene, and I was standing there filling him in on what had been said so far.
Did you have any other contact with Jessica?
No.
Send to the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examine?
Good morning, Deputy Taker.
Good morning.
You talked about going to the scene first.
Yes, sir.
And when you're talking about going to the scene, you're talking about out on Heron Road.
Right.
I believe you indicated that when you arrived there, you left pretty quickly.
Yes, sir.
And so and that you may have also indicated that you never even got out of the vehicle.
I don't remember getting out, no.
So you didn't, when you were out, let me ask you, did you actually have an occasion to go back to the area at Heron Road?
That night? No.
No, at some point later.
I've been through there, but no, not to look for any evidence or anything, no.
Okay, so you never did any
No, sir.
inspections for evidence. Okay. Now, you actually followed the ambulance and Deputy House out
Right.
to.
I was a little ways behind them, because like I say, when I pulled up, I was on the phone with Major Barry Thompson, I believe is who I was on the phone with. So I sat there and talked to him a minute, and then I turned around and went down where they was at.
And you went down to the landing zone?
Yes,
Were you
Deputy
involved-
House was already in the ambulance when I got there.
Certainly. Were you already involved in setting up the landing? Were you involved in setting up the landing zone?
Well, they actually had it done when I got down there.
Okay. And you talked about speaking with Ms. Chambers on 2 separate occasions during this short time frame.
Right.
Okay. Now, Mr. House, I believe you testified, was already in the ambulance when you arrived?
Yes,
Okay. So you were actually present when Mr. House was actually speaking with Ms. Chambers?
some of it. I
Okay.
mean, he had already taken pictures and spoke with her before I got in the ambulance. yes.
Certainly. So you had a separate conversation with Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Is that true?
Pretty much, yes.
And you actually had 2 separate conversations
Yes.
with her. Now, I understand that you were in the back of the ambulance.
Yes.
Describe, was it noisy in the back of the ambulance?
Not real noisy, no.
Okay. You could hear.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. When you were at the scene out on Heron Road, did you actually roll your windows down?
I did not.
Okay, so you don't.
I was on the phone, so no, I didn't put my windows
So you can't
down.
really testify as to what that scene was like noise-wise?
No.
But in the back of the ambulance, you could hear clearly, could you not?
Yeah, I mean, it's some noise in there because you got the medics moving around. They're getting stuff ready, opening packages. I mean, they're doing all kind of stuff and then, getting everything ready. So,
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's not like complete silence in there, no.
But that noise didn't prevent you from hearing Ms. Chambers?
Well,
did it?
her ability to speak was the only problem with hearing because she was real, real low.
Okay, let me clarify this. Her speaking, she was struggling to speak.
Yes.
Correct? But you could hear her even though that speech was low. Would you
Yes.
agree with that?
I could tell what she was saying, mumbling, yes.
Right. And you identify that when you asked her who did this to her, her response was Eric, was it not?
That's what it sounded like, yes.
And you asked her what was his last name. And you could make out that she said no?
No.
Okay. And you weren't sure whether or not she was saying no, she didn't know his last name, or what?
Or no, I had it wrong when I said Eric who, or I didn't know if she meant no, not Eric, or no, she didn't know the last name.
Right. But you're sure she said Eric, is
That's
that
what it
correct?
sounded like. I'm not sure of it, no, but that's what
Okay.
it sounded like.
Well, could it have been something else?
It could have been.
But in your report, you put Eric, did
Yes,
you not?
that's
And
what
when-
that's what it sounded like I heard, so that's what I put in my report.
Thank you.
yes.
And that report was completed when?
I didn't do that report it was about a year later.
Okay. You did your report a year later?
Yes.
Now, you exited the ambulance after the first conversation and
Yes.
had a conversation with Major Thompson, is
No,
that
with the
correct?
sheriff at
With
that
the sh-
point.
With the
Yes.
sheriff. And the sheriff will be who?
Dennis Darby.
Mr. Darby. So you spoke with Mr. Darby, and Mr. Darby gave you some instruction at that point, is that
Yes.
correct? And his instruction was what?
He asked me if I found out if she was black or white.
Okay.
He was black or white, and I told him that I hadn't got to that point yet. And he told me he was on the way to the scene. I told him I would find out.
Certainly. Now, when he asked you that, and please correct me if I misstate your testimony, but Sheriff Darby was asking you whether he was black or white.
Right.
Who was he?
Whoever did this, Eric or whoever done this,
Right. So
was trying to get all the information we can.
you communicated to Sheriff Darby that she had told you Eric. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And Sheriff Darby said, was Eric black or white?
Yes.
And you went back into the
Ambulance.
ambulance. Was anyone in the back of the ambulance with you at this time?
Yes. Deputy House was still in there, and
He
the
was
medics
still-
were still in there too. Yes.
And you asked her, was the person black or white?
I did.
And she said he was black.
Yes.
You sure about that?
Yes.
Okay. So you sure that she said he was black, but you're not sure whether or not he said it was Eric?
Well, I mean, black don't sound like, I mean, when you say black or white, I mean, you can't hardly get those two mixed up. I mean, you got the black sound and then you got white. That's definitely two different sounds.
Yes, sir.
I mean, like I say, it was nothing plain, but you could tell that she was saying black.
But you communicated that to your superior,
Yes, I did.
and you relayed that information that Eric had, or that the information you had was that Eric did this and Eric was black.
Yes.
And you communicated that to your boss or your superior, Mr. Darby.
Yes.
You came back out and the helicopter was landing, correct?
Yes.
And do you know when you came back, when you actually got to the scene, you indicated that Mr. House had already taken pictures.
Yes.
And this would have been before you actually entered the back of the ambulance for the first time.
Correct.
Did you actually see those pictures?
No, I did not,
How did you know he had taken them?
because he told me he did.
Okay,
I was the supervisor on shift that night. It's the reason they was calling me.
just trying to get some clarity.
Okay.
Mr. Tucker. Now, did Mr. House communicate anything to you concerning his conversations?
Not at that time, no.
Did he communicate with you concerning those conversations at a later point?
I read his report and checked his report.
When you read his report, did you come to the realization that Ms. Chambers communicated with you something very similar?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. House's report said she told him Eric, and you were like, well, that's the same thing she told me.
Yes.
Both of you all had that understanding.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that?
That's it.
Ask the court's indulgence.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tucker, one final question. You indicated in response to a question by Mr. Champion that Jessica's father was working there at the sheriff's department,
Yes.
and I believe you indicated that he no longer works there.
No.
Do you know why he no longer works there?
Look, Jack, that's got absolutely no relevance to this case whatsoever.
Your Honor, he opened the door to this.
You care to make a record on that, sir?
I'm asking the court, I didn't hear the court's ruling, Your Honor.
I sustain the objection.
Certainly, Your Honor.
On relevance. You wish to be heard on that?
No, Your Honor.
All right. You may continue.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect.
Just one question, Chuck. Mr. Peterson asked you if you had a conversation with Jessica. Do you recall that? Him
Yes, I
asking you
remember him
that?
asking that, yes.
Did you have a conversation with Jessica?
No. She never made a full sentence or never made a full statement. It was like I said, she struggled to say what appeared to be Eric. She struggled to say black, and then she said cold is what it sounded. That's the 3 words I heard her say, is all I ever heard her say.
That's perfect. He may be finally released.
You find excused, sir. You may remain in the courtroom and return to duty. Your choice. All right, let's take our morning recess. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put you in the jury room for about 15 minutes, and I'll send for you when we're ready. Thank you. Courtroom remain in order. All right, you may call your next witness.
Edward Dixon.
Raise your right hand. Do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Can I have a seat, sir?
What is your name?
Edward Dixon,
And what position do you hold with the Panola County Sheriff's Department?
Lieutenant over investigations,
And how long have you been with the Sheriff's Department?
23 years.
And how long have you been in investigations?
5 years.
Edward, back on December the 6th of 2014, did you receive a call to go to Heron Road?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yes, speaking that. And what was the nature of the call that you received from dispatch?
There was a burned vehicle in Cortland.
Okay. And were you advised at that time whether or not Jessica had been burned?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. And where were you when you got the call?
I was at home.
Okay. And do you remember about what time?
It's about 8:25, 8:20, somewhere around there.
And where is your residence? What town?
It's in Sardis.
Okay. Now, this jury's not from here, so kind of help them give the lay of the land here. Where is Sardis?
Sardis is going to be about maybe 11 miles north of here, where we are now, out 51.
Okay. And would it be straight up the interstate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Edward, did you in fact respond?
Yes, sir, I did.
And tell the jury what you found upon your arrival at the scene.
When I arrived on the scene, there was a burnt vehicle, several responders, fire trucks and whatnot in the area.
Okay. And were you advised of what had happened?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. And do you remember what you were advised?
Yes, sir, I was told that Jessica Chamber was burned in the vehicle.
And as a trained investigator, what steps did you take at that point?
Well, when I arrived on the scene, I just pretty much got my crime scene tape out and just kind of roped off that particular area as much as I could. There were several fire vehicles there, so I can only go so far out.
Okay. And describe for the jury, please, the position of the burned car.
It was pulled up in the, it was like a little hill that you have to go up. You have to give that vehicle quite a bit of speed to get that vehicle up that hill. And that's where it was when I arrived.
All right, what was to the right? Which direction was the front of the vehicle pointed? East, west, north, south?
It was pointing more, I want to say east.
Would it be back towards Cortland?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was to the right of the vehicle?
The right of the vehicle was there was a fence on the right side of that vehicle.
Okay. And what was right behind the vehicle?
That's a driveway behind the vehicle. That's other trees, of course.
Okay. So what would have been on the driver's side, which I guess would be the north side of the vehicle?
Well, you asked me about the north side of the vehicle?
Which would be the driver's side.
Yes, sir.
What was near that driver's door?
Of course, there's a tree farm on the other side. Of course, alongside there's the road, of course.
Okay. Would that be Heron Road?
Yes, sir.
When you talk about trees, were there any trees near the vehicle?
Yes, sir, there were.
Okay, and describe that for the jury, please.
The vehicle actually wedged up between a tree there was a tree on the left side of the vehicle, which is the driver's side. There were also some trees on the passenger side of the vehicle,
As well as a fence?
as well as the fence on the passenger side.
Okay. Now, as an investigator, when you get to a scene, do you do a visual examination?
I do a visual examination of the area, and then I start to, once I rope it off, I do a visual of the area, and then I get my cones and start marking for evidence, try to collect evidence while I'm there.
Okay, and this would be evidence that you noticed during your visual examination.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you say cones, what are you talking about?
There are markers from 1 to 100. Your first evidence that you get, or whatever you think is evidence, is going to be number 1, and on up until you finish.
And did you do that in this particular case?
Yes, sir, I did.
Your Honor, could Investigator Dixon come off the stand and look at him?
Yes, sir.
As an investigator, do you?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this photo being shown to the jury until it's being offered in the evidence.
I'm gonna have to, Your Honor, I have to get him to identify it.
I'm just,
All right.
in the
All
jury's
right,
presence.
I understand what his objection is. Objection will be overruled. If you will, take your time and go ahead and have the witness identified if you can, please.
Yes. As an investigator, do you also take photographs at the scene?
Yes, sir, I do.
And did you do that here?
Yes, sir.
I want to point you to the top left up here, and can you tell me what that is, please?
That looked more like the real.
All right, let me stop here a minute. I want the record to reflect that the exhibit is looks like about a 2 by 2.5 foot placard with pictures that are placed on it. And the objection was to the pictures being displayed to the jury before they were admitted into evidence. And the court finds it's reasonable for the counsel, the way the pictures are arranged on the placard there, to display them as they are, with the jury understanding that these are not in evidence yet. And if they're not admitted into evidence, the jury would be instructed to disregard those pictures and what they see. But if the witness is able to identify those in a substantial way, then of course you're allowed to consider those along with any other evidence that's presented. So with that statement into the record, you may continue.
All right, Edward, I'll go to the top left.
That's the rear passenger side.
Okay. The top middle.
Excuse me, Your Honor. Can I reposition myself so I can review the pictures while it's that's
Sure.
fine?
All right, Mr. Peterson, did you see this? But the top left is what now?
That's the rear passenger side of the vehicle.
Okay, and this would be on the right-hand side or left-hand side?
It's going to be on the right-hand side.
Okay, and would this be the side nearest the fence?
Yes, sir.
What is the top center photograph?
That's the front driver's side with the door open there.
And is this the way you found it?
Yes, sir.
Now, what is this, Edward, right here, which appears to be right next to the door?
I think it's a pine tree.
Now, what is depicted in the top right?
That's the other driver's side.
Is this just taken a little further back?
Yes, sir, it is.
Now, what is depicted here in the middle picture on the left?
Number 2, that's going to be the cell phone.
Okay, and where was that cell phone located?
It was just a few feet away from the driver's side door.
All right, number 4 that we have here, what is this, please?
That's a lighter.
Okay, and where was that located?
It was more or less also about a driver's side door. As you can see, it was kind of in some weeds there a little bit.
And then exhibit number 3 down here at the bottom left,
That's going to be the back of the cell phone.
and where was it located?
Just not far from the cell phone itself.
And then finally, exhibit number 5.
That's just a lighter that was there also.
Your Honor, at this time, I would offer this as an exhibit to this witness's testimony.
All right.
No objection, Your Honor.
Being no objection, it'll be marked and admitted. If you'd hand it to the court reporter, please,
Yes,
and
sir.
mark it. Counsel, feel free, anytime we're displaying anything to the jury, feel free you don't have to ask me for permission to go and take a position over there where you can see.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. All right, you may continue.
Thank you. Now, Edward, when you did your visual examination, did you walk up near the car?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when you walked up near the car, did you see the cell phone?
Yes, sir, I saw it was on the ground.
Okay, and did you also see the back of the cell phone?
Yes, sir.
Now, is on the door that was open and partially ajar, in relation to that door, where was the cell phone in the back of the cell phone found?
Just a couple of feet away from the vehicle on the driver's side. It was on the ground.
It was on the ground near the open door.
Yes, sir.
Did you, at this time, look or continue to look for other evidence that may be located around the scene?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you notice anything of particular interest?
Other than the cell phone, when we checked the area a little bit more, and there was some burnt clothing, what appeared to be burnt clothing on the ground, and that was also marked as evidence.
Okay. Now, Edward, all right, the jury is somewhat familiar just from us talking, but you've got the driveway, you've got the position of the car.
Yes, sir.
Where was the clothing located? To my right or to my left?
It was going to be, actually, the clothing was located behind the vehicle, more or less behind the vehicle. It was like a little ravine, and the clothing was there in that little ravine.
All right, are you familiar with the drive that enters into the tree farm in the honey camp back in the back?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, was the car on the left or the right of that driveway if you're looking at the gate?
It's going to be on the left of the driveway if you're looking at the gate.
And the clothing that you found, would it have been on the right or the left of that drive?
It's going to be on the right of that drive.
Okay, so across behind the car.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you have occasion to examine the clothing?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you place markers down around the clothing as well?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, Edward, how was it, dark or light out there that night, or can you describe the conditions for the jury?
It was pretty dark, but you did have some lighting from the fire trucks that were there, but it was a pretty dark area.
Okay, and it was after sunset, correct?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. And did you take photographs of the clothing that you observed there at the scene?
Yes, sir, I did.
Edward, I want to hand you a series of photographs, and I would ask you to look through those, please, and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, let's look at the first picture, please, and tell me what is that?
Number 10 is going to be a piece of a bra, clothing.
All right, look at the next one.
Number 9 is going to be clothing also. Number 7 is also going to be burnt clothing. 8 is also going to be burnt clothing. 6 is also going to be burnt clothing.
Your Honor, I would offer these as a collective exhibit to this witness's testimony.
All right, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, they'll be marked and admitted as a collective exhibit.
Number 7.
What was 16? This one. Edward, did you also collect these items of evidence?
I didn't collect them. I had someone to collect them and mark them, what time they was collected, where they were sitting at when they collected them. That would be Brent Crawford.
Okay, and you had help out there that night, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you weren't the only one there?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Okay. And after this clothing was collected, was it placed into evidence at the sheriff's department?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay, and was it subsequently sent to the ATF lab in Atlanta?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. Now, Edward, did you find anything else of evidentiary value out there at the scene that night?
No, sir, not that night.
Okay. Did you find anything else out there later on?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you do a search of the area as best you could in the dark that night?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. Now, did you have the vehicle towed, or was the vehicle towed from that scene?
Yes, sir, it was.
And where was it taken?
It was taken to the sheriff's department.
And was it photographed the next day in a better light?
Yes, sir, it was.
I would ask you to look at these photographs, and do you recognize them?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what are these series of photographs?
Those are the photographs of the burnt vehicle that we had taken to the sheriff's department.
Your Honor, I've offered this as an exhibit to this witness's testimony.
Any objection? Being no objection, will be marked and admitted as a collected exhibit. Again, the pictures are displayed, I think, what is it, 9 pictures?
6.
6 pictures displayed on a placard. So it will be marked and admitted as an exhibit to this witness's testimony.
Your Honor, may ever come down?
Yes, sir. Let me stand down, sir.
Edward, I want to ask you on the top left, what is that photograph?
That's a photograph of the front of the vehicle.
And exhibit, or photograph number 2, top right.
That's a photograph of the rear of the vehicle.
And then photograph number 3, middle left.
That's also a photograph for the back of the vehicle also. You can see where the door is still partially open.
Talking about this area right here.
Yes, sir.
Can you see, I'm sorry, can you see okay? Edward, middle right, and what is that a photograph of?
That's a photograph for the right side, passenger side.
And then on the bottom left,
The bottom left is going to be a photograph of the driver's side.
okay, and then the bottom right.
Bottom right is going to be a photograph of the passenger side, part of the front of the vehicle.
And these photographs were taken after the vehicle was taken to the sheriff's department by the record search, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, Edward, I would ask you to look at these photographs and tell me if you can identify them.
Yes, sir, it's the inside of the vehicle
And these were photos taken,
at the sheriff department.
and these photographs we just looked at were exterior photographs, is that right?
Yes, sir, these are interior.
Your Honor, I would offer this as an exhibit to this witness's testimony.
Mark it, get it.
Edward, what is depicted in the top left photograph?
This is a picture of the inside of the vehicle.
Okay. And this is the driver's
This is
side?
the driver's side, the passenger side. You can see where the passenger side seat is in a reclined position.
Okay. And I was going to ask you about that. Did that catch your all's attention when you were looking at these photographs?
Yes, sir, it did because of the way the seat is positioned.
All right, what is the top right?
That's the passenger side seat. It's still, as you can see, it's still in a reclined position.
And middle left?
That's the driver's side. The seat here is a little bit closer to the steering wheel.
And then,
This is going to be the rear back seat area of the vehicle.
obviously the photograph here at your bottom.
Yes, sir, back seat area where you can still see the seat. Passenger side is reclined position.
Thank you. Edward, at the time, who was the major in charge of investigations?
Barry Thompson.
And were you in contact with him when you were out on the scene?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. And were you advising him of what was going on as far as what you were finding there on the scene?
Yes, sir.
Edward, at this point, did you continue to be actively involved with the investigation of this case?
Yes, sir.
And did you participate in the interviews of witnesses?
Yes, sir, some I did.
Okay. And would you describe for the jury how big this investigative unit that was doing this case became?
It was extremely big. We had several different agencies, ATF, FBI, U.S. Marshals, so all your surrounding agencies, we pretty good size.
Okay. And did you have a lot of help in the case?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. Tender the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Peterson? You can take that exhibit down if you want, or you can leave it up. What?
Mr. Dixon, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Peterson.
You've been briefly covering this, but you've been in law enforcement for 23 years,
Yes, sir, I have.
and you've been in investigations for 5 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what is your let me ask you like this. You're in investigations now,
Yes, sir, I am.
and you're basically the head of investigations here in Panola County?
Yes, sir,
Sheriff's
for the
Department.
Sheriff's Department, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. And during the time of this incident involving Ms. Chambers, you were also the head of investigations. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And at that time, you would have been the head of investigations for a little bit over a year, correct?
Yes, sir.
But now, you've been doing this for 23 years, so you've had some investigation experience, I would imagine.
Well, I haven't been doing investigations for 23 years, so I've just been with the Sheriff's Department 23 years.
Certainly.
Yes,
Now-
sir.
Now, prior to that 5-year period where you were head of investigations, what were you doing with this? Well, let me ask first, was that 23 years in total with the Panola County Sheriff's Department?
Yes, sir.
And prior to you becoming the head of investigations, what was your position?
I was a patrolman for 5 years.
Okay.
And before that, I was a jailer turnkey for 11 and a half years.
Okay. So turnkey, what does that mean?
A jailer, just you book them in when you, an arresting them.
You were not,
I worked in booking. When they would bring someone to jail, I would process them, fingerprint them, take their pictures.
certainly, okay. And then after that, patrolling, and then you became head of investigation.
Yes, sir.
Now, during your progression with the Panola County Sheriff's Department, tell me what additional training, for lack of a better word, did you undergo as you were promoted up the ranks, if that makes sense?
Yes, sir. I will have to get the secretary to bring you my documentation, but
Certainly.
we had several training, FBI training also,
Okay.
active shooters training, so we had several different types of training.
Okay. And you went, prior to becoming head of investigations, you took, I guess, significant training in how to conduct investigations. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you were called out, and if I misstate something, Mr. Dixon, please tell me, but you were called out, according to my notes, about 8:25.
Yes, sir. Roughly.
Approximately.
Yes, sir.
And you responded directly to the scene coming from Sardis.
Yes, sir. I did.
Upon your arrival to this scene, was Ms. Chambers still present?
No, sir. Not when I made it to the scene. She was not. No, sir.
So she had already been transported by the time you arrived.
Yes, sir.
I take it there were several first responders, firemen still on the scene at the time of your arrival.
Yes, sir. There was.
And was the big red fire truck there? If there,
Had a couple of big red fire trucks and a couple of small ones also. Yes, sir.
so there were about 4 fire trucks there when you arrived?
Give or take. Yes, sir.
Certainly. And the car, as we've heard testimony, was up against the fence.
The nose of it was up against a tree, but it was in between a fence that was on the passenger side.
Yes, sir.
There was a pine tree on the driver's side, and there was a tree in front of the vehicle.
Certainly. But the car was actually parallel to that fence.
Yes, sir, it
So
was.
it was down beside the fence.
Yes, sir,
fair to
that's
say?
right,
Okay.
that's right.
And you testified that you roped off the area when you got there.
Yes, sir, with my crime scene tape, the best that I could with the amount of space that I had to work with because of the fire trucks and other people in the area.
As you sit here today, were any of the fire trucks obstructing your ability to rope off the scene?
Oh, no, sir, they wasn't. No, sir.
So the fire trucks were out of your way.
Yes, sir, they
and
were.
They wouldn't have prevented you from roping off the scene.
Oh, no, sir, they
Okay.
weren't.
And you roped off an area basically that surrounded the vehicle.
Yes, sir, I did.
Now we talked about the position of the vehicle, and the car was parallel to the fence.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And then the actual trunk of the car would have been facing this driveway that we've heard so much about.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
But it wasn't actually in that driveway, was it?
No, sir, it wasn't blocking the drive.
And when you taped off this scene, did your crime scene extend into that driveway area?
Yes, sir. Actually, crossed over the driveway area.
It crossed over the driveway area?
Yes, sir. it
Okay.
did.
And when you were there, you encountered several first responders, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you make your visual assessment prior to roping off the area, or was that something that you used to ascertain the area that you were going to rope off?
Once I got there, I just picked a particular spot that I wanted to rope off,
Okay.
and I just roped it off.
And in picking that particular spot to rope off, you actually performed an assessment based upon
What I saw from the vehicle, yes, sir.
what you saw. Okay. Was that assessment based upon any conversations that you had with the first responders?
No, sir, I never spoke to any first responders when I got there.
Okay.
I just kind of just viewed it. Yes, sir.
Mike, just a little bit. It's getting distorted.
Okay.
We want this jury to hear everything you got to
Yes,
say,
sir.
okay, plainly. All right, thank you.
Could you ask that question again, Mr. Peterson?
Let me see if I can remember it, sir. When you were making your assessment of the crime scene, I believe you said that you didn't talk to any first responders in making your determination as to the area that you were going to rope off. Would that be fair?
Yes, sir, that's fair.
Okay. So in doing so, and in completing your investigation, did that entail speaking to any people on the scene?
I did. Once I got my area roped off,
Okay.
I did speak to a couple of people on the scene.
Okay. Did anything about those conversations cause you to change the area where you may have been focused at originally?
No, sir, I was pretty much satisfied with the area that I had already roped off.
Did you speak with any of the individuals who arrived first who indicated that Ms. Chambers, when they arrived on the scene, was coming from an area about 30 feet away from where their car was?
No, sir, I did not.
You did not?
No, sir, I did.
Did you actually come to find that information out later on?
I did later. I think it was more or less the next day.
Okay.
I didn't really talk to anyone when I was there because I was focusing on the crime scene.
Certainly. And as you understood it, the crime scene would have been right there where the car was burned.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you perform your visual examination, and this was at night,
Yes, sir, it was.
and there was quite a bit of light out.
There wasn't much light. Like I said, most of the light came from your fire trucks. It was pretty dark that night.
Okay. And did you have the use of any other light source?
I had flashlights.
You had flashlights?
Yes, sir, I
Let
did.
me ask you, how long were you actually on the scene on this particular evening?
Mr. Peterson, I would probably say a couple of hours or more.
A couple hours?
Yes, sir.
And when you were there on the scene, you had assistance of other officers?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Which officers were those?
Well, I basically had help from Agent Crawford. He's the one that kind of helped
Okay,
write the date and the time on my bags when I was collecting evidence.
certainly.
He was basically the only one that I really dealt with when I was on the crime scene.
Okay. So there were just two officers from the Panola County Sheriff's Department out of the crime scene on this particular occasion?
No, sir, there were several other officers there, but I just got assistance from Agent Crawford.
Okay. Let me ask you like this. Were there any other Panola County officers assisting you with your investigation on this particular occasion?
There were several other officers, yes, sir. As far as gathering the information, intel on any witnesses that might have been in the area or what somebody might have seen, they did do that as far as gathering the information that night, yes, sir.
Okay. And did they report back to you any of this information?
They didn't report back to me that night because I was still on the crime scene. I basically told them any information they might have gathered to just leave it in my office on my desk because my office was open at the time.
Certainly.
Yes, sir.
Did you become aware of any additional information after that night?
Can you be a little bit more specific about additional
Certainly.
information?
Let me ask you, let me
Yes,
say it
sir.
like this. Did you come to discover any additional information that, in your opinion, may have been relevant to your investigation in this crime?
No, sir, not that night. Like I said, there was quite a bit going on, so this is like 4 years ago.
Yes.
So not at that time I didn't.
Okay. Well, I understand not that night, but you alluded to your office being open.
Yes, sir.
What I'm saying is, after that night, did you come to acquire any other information from some of these other officers who may have turned over to you information relevant to your investigation of this particular crime?
They turned the information over to me that they thought might be relevant to the case. Yes, sir, I did
Okay.
receive information from them.
Can you tell the jury what that information was as you sit here?
Some of the information was what Jessica Chambers, what they thought she might have said.
Okay.
Some of the information was someone that they saw maybe hanging around in the general area at that time. They wasn't sure who it was. Information like that.
Okay. Now, we've talked about your collection of evidence from the crime scene.
Yes, sir, we did.
Was there any additional evidence that may have been turned over to you that would have been collected at the crime scene, other than what we've talked about thus far?
If there was any additional evidence that was collected, I didn't receive it.
Okay. And had there been some additional evidence collected, it would have come to the head of investigation. Would that be fair to say?
No, sir, because we had several different agencies that was helping out, so it could have gone to either one of them.
Well, I'm talking about on the days immediately following this crime.
Well, you would think it would, yes, sir, you would think it would have come to me, but like I said, once again, all of it didn't come directly to me because with Barrett Thompson being a major,
Yes.
he could also assume control over the case also.
But now, you and Mr. Thompson talk frequently, I'm sure, about this case. Would you
Yes, sir.
Would that be fair? Did Mr. Thompson ever advise you that he had acquired additional information?
He did not. If he did, Mr. Peterson, I can't remember right now.
Okay. So, performed a visual investigation, and you collected evidence on this particular night, and you had markers that go from 1 to 100.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Is there anything magical about that 1 to 100, or can it go as high as you need it to go?
I'm going to assume that it can go as high as you want it to go because it'll go from 1 to 100, but you can also put an extra number behind that 100.
Certainly. And the first thing you collect will be number 1, and so on.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about this exhibit. May I approach you, Honor?
Okay, you may step down.
Yes, Your Honor. May I? Sit down. Mr. Dixon,
Yes, sir.
in that exhibit, it's been marked as an exhibit to your testimony. There appears to be a phone. I think you testified to that earlier.
Yes, sir, here.
And number, now where was that?
It was just a couple of feet on the driver's side door.
It wasn't far from the driver's side door, right about this area here.
So it was a couple of feet from that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say a couple of feet. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm looking at that, those pictures, the top 3 pictures, those are pictures of that car. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Those are pictures of the car while it was sitting there next to the fence. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir, I would.
That phone was located in fairly close proximity to that car. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
It was a pretty big fire, wasn't it?
It was.
That ground does not even appear to be burnt. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. It doesn't appear to be burned here.
Right. But was the phone moved?
I can't say when it was moving out. It was, I can only testify to where it was when I got there.
But that particular phone, the picture there, the phone in that picture was where you originally saw it at.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And it was next to the vehicle that was so badly burnt that we're
Yes, sir, a
looking
few
at.
feet away from it.
And you would agree that that phone doesn't look burnt, does it?
It doesn't look burnt to me,
And
no, it
that
doesn't.
ground next to it, where that phone is sitting, doesn't look burnt either, does it?
That's correct.
And let's drop down to number 3. That's the back of a phone.
Yes, sir, it is.
Now, was it the back to the phone in number 2?
We later determined it was the back to the phone in number 2.
Okay. And where was that collected?
It wasn't much further from the phone, but as you can see, number 3, now it does look a little burnt in this area here, but it wasn't much further from the phone.
You actually had a chance to personally examine those items, did you not?
I did collect those items and put them in the bag, yes, sir.
Okay. Were they burnt?
No, sir, they was not.
Were they singed in any way?
No, sir, they
So
was
they
not.
were sitting there next to a heat source that was the reason for how many fire trucks were on the scene when you got there?
I want to say at least 3, Mr. Peterson, at least.
So there were three fire trucks on the scene, and the phone sitting 2 feet from this car is undamaged.
As we can see, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, number 4,
Yes, sir.
I believe you testified that there was a lighter.
Yes, sir, Mr. Light.
Okay. I apologize. That ground appears to be singed a bit, does it not?
Yes, sir, it is.
And where was that actually in proximity to this vehicle?
That lighter, Mr. Peterson, that lighter was more at the rear of the vehicle. It was on the driver's side.
Okay. Was it closer than that phone was, if you recall?
Right off the top, Mr. Peterson, I really can't recall how close it was to that vehicle.
Now, number 5, Mr. Dixon. Can you tell me what that is again? I apologize.
Number 5, that's another lighter.
That's another lighter.
Yes, sir.
And number 4 and 5 were both lighters.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Did they, during the course of your investigation, did you discover that they had any relevance to this crime?
We did discover that they really didn't have any relevance to this crime.
Okay, so they didn't have anything to do with it.
No, sir, it did
Okay.
not.
What about 2 and 3? Did you discover at some point that they may be connected to this crime in some way?
Yes, sir, we actually got a search warrant for that phone before we did anything with that phone.
Okay.
And it was determined that it was Jessica Chambers' phone.
Okay. So that phone next to the car was actually Jessica Chambers' phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dixon, let's talk about this clothing in the ravine.
Yes, sir.
Whatever happened with that clothing?
Mr. Peterson, those clothing were returned to the sheriff's department. Someone in booking did sign for those clothing. I can't tell you, Mr. Peterson, what happened after they signed for.
Okay. Now, and please correct me if I mistake your testimony, Mr. Dixon, but I believe you indicated that that stuff was forwarded to the ATF lab in Atlanta?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. Did you forward it?
Actually, we had 2 agents to take it there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
They actually drove it to Atlanta?
Yes, sir, they drove it that night.
Okay.
Yes, sir, they did.
The night of December 6th.
The night of December 6th, actually, it was that morning is when they left out going to Atlanta.
Now, who took these pictures?
I took those pictures there.
You took those pictures? There?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you took those on the night that this happened?
Yes, sir, I did.
There on Herring Road, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Dixon, I want you to take a look at this other exhibit. Now, Ms. Dixon, those are, I believe you testified that those are pictures taken of that particular vehicle after it had been transported to the sheriff's office.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Who took those pictures?
I'm not sure, Mr. Peterson, who took those pictures. I didn't take them.
You didn't take those pictures?
No, sir, I did not.
Do you know when they were actually taken?
They were actually taken Monday during the daylight.
Okay. Now, in that top picture,
This picture here.
that picture there, there's a little blue tarp on it.
Yes,
Do you
sir.
know what that is?
Do I know what it is?
Yes, sir.
It's a tarp that was used to cover the vehicle.
Okay. And how do you know that it was actually covering the vehicle?
Because when we covered this vehicle to preserve any evidence that we felt like that might be in this vehicle. So when it was told to the impound lot, they were given instructions to cover the vehicle once it arrived to the sheriff's department.
Okay. So those pictures were taken at your direction?
Yes, sir, they were.
Okay. Do you recall who took them?
No, sir, I can't remember who took those pictures,
Okay.
Mr. Peterson.
Did you actually inspect the vehicle once it came to the sheriff's department?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Your inspection would have been limited to the time when it was out on Heron Road.
Yes, sir.
That inspection would have happened at night, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You indicated that the front passenger seat was reclined.
Yes, sir, the front passenger seat.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And my notes say that got your attention.
Well, it did because of the position of the seat as far back as it was sitting. I mean, it just basically tell you that someone was sitting there. I mean, it's not often anybody riding around with their passenger seat reclining. There's nobody sitting in it.
Okay. Do you know when the actual passenger seat would have been reclined?
No, sir, I can't. Sir.
Okay. Can you tell this jury that when that car was at the scene on Herring Road that passenger seat was reclined?
It was reclined on the scene. Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. And you didn't take any pictures of it while it was sitting there other than what we've already seen?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You took pictures of the vehicle while it was out on Heron Road, correct? And we've
Yes, sir.
seen those.
Yes, sir.
Did you take any pictures of the wooded area?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Did you have an occasion to go back out to the scene after December 6th?
Yes, sir, I went back out that Monday.
Okay.
There was a little bit more daylight just to see if I might have missed anything. Yes, sir, I did.
Okay.
The following day.
The following day, that would have been...
That would have been Monday. I apologize. Sunday
Okay.
would have been the following day.
So you went back out the following day?
Yes, sir.
Were you alone?
Yes, sir, I was.
Did you take any pictures on this occasion?
No, sir, I did not.
Now, on the night in question, Mr. Dixon, describe to me what you did, other than take the pictures, how you actually went about investigating the vehicle itself.
After collecting evidence, as you see, I took pictures of the door partially open. I did look on the inside of the vehicle, also on the outskirts of the vehicle. I also looking to see where the vehicle was positioned as far as that at my investigation.
Okay. What investigation did you do as to the interior of the actual vehicle?
The vehicle was still a little warm when we got there, so I didn't do any investigation to the interior of the vehicle. Once the vehicle cooled off, then we had it taken to the sheriff's department, and then therefore they finished doing the interior investigation once it arrived at the sheriff's department the following day when it was a little bit cooler for that vehicle.
You are aware that Ms. Chambers was not actually found in that car, are you not?
I was aware of that, yes, sir.
Did you have an occasion to perform any additional investigations in the surrounding wooded area?
I might have, some of the other guys did. It wasn't me, but some of the other guys did.
Do you have any knowledge of any investigations that would have been conducted by some of the other guys?
No, sir, I do not.
So that would be speculation on your part?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Dixon, you actually completed a report concerning this incident, did you not?
Yes, sir, I did.
And that report, I believe, was completed in 2017?
The report was completed in 2014.
It was completed in 2014?
Yes, sir.
Was it completed on the same night?
Oh, no, sir, not the same night.
Do you recall when you may have completed your report?
I'm going to say at least couple of days after, if not.
Are you aware of any information that may have been obtained from those clothes found in the ravine? I apologize. You testified that the clothes were actually driven to a lab in Atlanta.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And I assume that they were driven there for the purpose of some type of testing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My question is, are you aware of the results of any of that testing?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you actually receive any reports that you're aware of related to the testing of those clothes?
Reports were received, but they didn't come directly to me.
Okay. Are you aware of them actually coming back to anyone?
Yes, sir, I'm sure they came back to someone. Like I said, we had several different agencies, like I said, ATF, FBI, and like I said, Barrett Thompson, he did play a major part in the investigation, so I did have a lot of help. Now, who it might have came back to, I can't.
Let me ask you like this, Mr.
Yes,
Dixon.
sir.
You've not reviewed any reports, I take it?
I hadn't, no,
Not
sir.
personally?
No, sir, not personally.
Has anyone conveyed to you the results of any reports that
If-
you're aware of?
If they did, Mr. Peterson, right now, I can't remember. Like I
Okay.
said, it's been a while.
Okay. Now, you talked also about this investigation being fairly large,
Yes, sir, it was.
and you referenced the ATF, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals,
Several
the U.S.
different
Attorney's
agencies.
Office.
Yes, sir,
Did I
that's
leave out
correct.
anyone?
We probably did.
The NBI, they were involved.
They were.
Mississippi Bureau of Investigation.
Yes, sir, they were.
At what point did you, Panola County, start to receive additional assistance in this investigation?
Mr. Peterson, we actually started receiving additional help in this investigation almost as soon as I made it back to the office when I left the scene. And we had different agencies from all over willing to help, and they was there for whatever we needed. So actually, they really showed up there that night.
Okay, so it was pretty immediate, right?
Yes, sir, it was.
And at some point, I know that you're the head of investigations for Panola County, but did someone actually, other than yourself, take the lead position in this investigation?
I would say that we had several people take the lead
Okay.
because we had so many different witnesses, so many different people that we had to interview. So everybody played a very important part. So I wouldn't just say that anybody just took the lead, but I could say that they helped out as much as they could.
Okay. Ask the court's indulgence.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hickson, just a couple of other questions.
Yes, sir.
We talked about you taping off the area where the car was.
Yes, sir.
And did it concern you at some point that, well, please correct me, but I believe you indicated that at some point you spoke with some paramedics who did tell you that she came from an area just, would I be saying west? Is that the proper direction? Away from Cortland.
Away from Cortland. I'm not sure
From
who
that
I spoke
direction.
with, Mr. Peterson. Like I said, when I arrived on the scene, I couldn't tell you who told me, but somebody did tell me that she came from another direction. I think the tree farm area.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure who I spoke with.
Did that concern you at all?
At that point in time, no, sir. I was focusing on that vehicle.
Okay. So the young lady who eventually died here.
Yes, sir.
She came from a different area, but that didn't well, did she go?
It crossed. Yes, I'll let you finish.
No, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I mean, it did concern me, but at the same token, I was still focusing on this burnt vehicle here. Although she did come from that area, at that point in time, this here would have been my crime scene area
Okay.
until I found out something different.
Certainly. Did you focus any attention on the area where you were advised that she had come from?
No, sir, Mr. Peterson, I did not.
Okay. I turn to the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Edward, so the jury will understand, you were not the lead investigator on this case, is that correct?
That's correct.
When you have, the way the command structure is set up at the sheriff's department, when you have a major incident such as this, what rank takes over as head of the investigation?
Major, or whatever rank is over me.
Okay, and in this particular case, who was that?
Major Barry Thompson.
Okay. You assisted with the investigation, but you were not in charge of the investigation.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Let me back up a second. Mr. Peterson asked you about the crime scene itself and where you taped it off. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, he did.
And you said that you were told that Jessica came out from the woods about 30 to 40 feet behind the vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. How far did you run the crime scene tape out? Did you run it all the way across the little drive?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And the ravine that Mr. Peterson referred to is really not a ravine,
No.
is it?
No,
What-
sir.
What is it? Where
It's
the
just a
clothing
little,
was found?
like a little washout trench where water was just running down the little trench there.
Okay. And was that area taped off?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. Approximately how far behind the car was that?
I'd probably say about 6, 8 feet.
But it was all the way across the road.
Yes, it was across the drive.
So you go up the drive, you go up the hill where the car was,
Yes, sir.
then you have to come down the hill, then you have to go. I'll rephrase.
I won't make an objection. I think it's harmless. You may continue.
You have to go up the hill to get to the car, right?
Yes, sir.
And you have to come back down the hill, go across the road to get to where the clothes were.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And all that area was taped off.
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. Was anything of evidentiary value ever found anywhere else around that scene?
No, sir.
Did y'all request that search and rescue for Panola County come out and comb that particular area?
Yes, sir.
And did they do that?
Yes, sir, they did.
Okay. You did observe the car behind the sheriff's department, did you not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there may have been misunderstood. All of these things that you testified to a moment ago, even though you didn't take the pictures, you personally saw each and every one of those things at the sheriff's department.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Tend to the witness, or this witness may be finally excused, Your Honor.
All right. Sir, you're finally excused. You may return to duty or remain in the courtroom. Your choice.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Yes, sir. Please.
Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the noon recess now. I'm going to put you in recess. Probably we'll send back for you about 1:30. I think that will give Ms. Phelps time to get you your lunch and let you all take a break, and then we'll try to start promptly about 1:30. All right? So I will now excuse you to your jury room.